Let me make one thing clear. I love Scribblenauts games. Scribblenauts Unlimited was one of the only games I ever played on the Wii U, and while I only played through Scribblenauts Unmasked once through on my DS, I still really enjoyed it. These games made up a good part of my childhood and really showed me how to make a difference, by creating a zombie and not knowing it was contagious. Like, really contagious. And sure, it didn't make a lot of sense that you can't give a vampire blood, but you can feed a cannibal a baby, but that absurdity is also what made it so fun to explore. Even after completing both games, I went back and wanted to do every task, get every achievement, and find new ways to bring the undead into war with American soldiers, seeing who the first will be to fall. It was fun. However, upon this golden franchise is a dark stain, and its name is Scribblenauts Showdown. With the release of both Unlimited and Unmasked for consoles including the Switch coming up almost a month after it's announced, I thought I'd go ahead and look back at what the Unlimited and Masked games did right that I enjoyed so much, what Showdown did wrong, and what needs to happen for this Mega Pack to become my favorite Switch port. Before I do though, let me explain something. While they are all Scribblenauts games, I want to make the differences very clear. I played this on the Wii U, this on a DS, and this on the Switch. These are meant to be puzzle-solving sandbox games, and this one is meant to be a Mario Party-like game, but with a sandbox mode. That being said, let's first look at one of the most important things for any game, controls. What made Scribblenauts Unlimited so special was its use of the gamepad and the TV. The D-pad allowed you to select objects easier and type way faster than on a controller. And with such a large screen, it was great for just about anyone, and is really only rivaled by playing on an $800 or more PC. It was one of the few third-party games I feel embraced the Wii U's weirdness with open arms and really made it work. When you look at Unmasked, it had mostly the same idea, just on a smaller screen, so you'll clearly need a stylus. Now Showdown actually had a pretty interesting way around this. In console mode, they have you use a joystick to select a circle of 4 different characters and push the buttons for the corresponding one. Now credit where credit's due, I thought this was a really creative idea for consoles in general to be able to type faster, but after experiencing both the Wii U and the DS's use of the touchscreen, I was interested to see how the game integrated portable mode touchscreen. They didn't. No keyboard, no touch compatibility, at all. I'm sorry, but the inner 10-year-old Scribblenauts fanboy in me who still keeps the guide that came with the game on my bookshelf next to my bed says I need to explain that Scribblenauts is a sandbox game that has you type stuff into existence. The original game was on a DS and used a touchscreen keyboard for crying out loud. It's a fundamental control of the game, and speaking of controls, it only gets worse. You see that extra set of buttons and joystick on the controller? Whoops, you don't get to use those. In fact, you have to use a singular Joy-Con when not playing in handheld mode. Who developed this game? Shiver Entertainment? Look, Shiver. Just because the graphics on the back of the box don't show the left and right bumpers doesn't mean you didn't see the left joystick that was used for moving the camera, and doesn't mean you couldn't have it at least copy and pasted the handheld mode controls onto it so that I don't have to use a Joy-Con when I'm not in handheld mode. Because guess what, Shiver? It's been 6 years since I first played Scribblenauts Unlimited with my big, bulky Wii U gamepad, and since then I've become a man, more or less, with huge, spidery man fingers that hate using the Joy-Cons when they shouldn't be needed to play alone. The only reason that wasn't an issue with the DS is because it didn't have an alternative. Those 4 extra buttons aren't useless, Shiver, and neither is that extra joystick or touchscreen. They aren't there as an obstacle for you to work around. They're there to help you as a developer to make your game easier to play and easier for your customers to enjoy. In regards of how I feel about it, I think it's important to see how they worked around the touchscreen. To me, some things make more sense than others. Having a B button be what you use to select an object doesn't feel natural to me, but then using the right joystick to scroll through characters nearby in order to make sure that you can select the right one makes perfect sense to me. But geez, did you have to have Y be a default action? Unless you're holding a weapon and your target is nearby, then you're just going to end up stealing or picking up something, and then instead of dropping it when you press Y again, you end up messing with it instead. And Shiver, I'm going to say you didn't bother to ask 5th Cell any tips on how to make the tasks appear below a character when you select them, because you slapped all the tasks in a list on the menu screen next to that all too tempting quit button. And maybe if you're going to put all the tasks on a list as opposed to showing us who wants what task done, then maybe you should be more specific with tasks, because there are like 20 things that categorize as a monster in Monster Park, and I don't feel like spending 3 hours giving each of them various things in the hopes that that's the one specific thing that will make them scary. Now I see 2 counterpoints to this whole video. Number 1, it is a Mario Party ripoff and shouldn't be critiqued as a puzzle-solving sandbox game. And 2, this game is meant for kids and nothing more. I am no longer their target audience and am blinded by nostalgia. To the first point, I argue that if it shouldn't be critiqued as a puzzle-solving sandbox game, then you shouldn't have included a sandbox mode. Or better yet, not base it off a sandbox IP. Just slap this whole game into some other Warner Brothers games property. Harry Potter Dumbledore's treasure board games that totally isn't Jumanji. There, you've got a bigger audience on a great console with an IP that people don't really care about in terms of video games because they don't infringe upon the source material. And I'm not trying to bash Shiver for trying to make something new with the franchise. I wouldn't have exactly minded a new take on the IP, but it lacks anything inventive or new for the franchise and instead goes for a party game with the exact same look as the other games, with sandbox mode wedged in there for longtime fans looking to get what they want out of this game, only to give us a half-baked game mode with poor controls and missions that are more of a pain than anything else. As for the second point, well, you're not entirely wrong. When Unmasked Unlimited came out, I didn't have an iPad or go on YouTube to hear what people thought about stuff. I had my opinion as a 10 and 11 year old and that was it. When I heard that Scribblenauts would have a game on the Switch, a console I find to be everything that the Wii U did right plus some, I thought it would be a real winner in my heart, regardless of how old I am now, because at least I would be blinded by nostalgia, but no, they couldn't even pander right. And if you think I hate this game because the franchise wasn't good to begin with and I was too young to see that, then just have a look at what Nintendo Life and Metacritic have to say about these two games. They may not be making the same comparisons as me, but the point still stands that this Scribblenauts game has lower reviews than these Scribblenauts games. A 5 out of 10 on Nintendo Life, a 47 on Metacritic, and a 3 out of 10 from me. In conclusion, Scribblenauts has taken a serious tanking. This isn't the game that I wanted, and by the looks of things, it's not a game that others were hoping for as well. I personally blame Shiver Entertainment, a company whose Twitter hasn't been used since 2014 and whose site feels more like an advertisement to come work for them with Miami Life as part of their front and only page on there. This whole company feels like two sharks circling me, leaving me cold and nervous about what's to come next. So with Shiver apparently getting the reins to port the Mega Pack over to other consoles, I want to make sure that they understand what the Mega Pack needs. Number 1, a compatible touchscreen with handheld mode, as well as a QWERTY keypad. Number 2, objectives are either viewed when selecting a person, or are made very clear. And 3, all controls are customizable, so that if you can't be asked to optimize these buttons, Shiver, then we can do it ourselves. Those are my thoughts and hopes for the Mega Pack, as well as my thoughts on Scribblenauts Showdown. Now we just gotta wait and see if Shiver decides to listen. Until then, I'm Chris Portal from the channel Chris Portal, and I hated that outro.